This isn't the video I wanted to be making to start off my channel. I initially wanted to make a video ranking all the Like a Version covers of 2024, and that video has been recorded. However, after the Australian radio station Triple J's annual Hottest 100 countdown, I felt like I had to make something, the state of Australian music, to start out 2025. I feel like for a lot of people in Australia who follow the music scene, it's been impossible for the last few years to not hear some post talking about how the Australian music industry is doomed. And over the course of 2024, my goal was to do my best to immerse myself in what the Australian music scene had to offer. While most of the Australian albums that I would consider some of my favourites of the year, albums like Impossible Light by Oboa, Emma Villard's Alibi, Eaglemont's Party Boy, Party Dozen's Crime in Australia, they weren't albums that would be traditionally charting in the ARIA charts, or even played on Triple J. There are amazing things coming out of the Australian music scene. I really wanted to believe in an optimistic future for Australian music. However, the Hottest 100 of 2024 kind of shattered any hope I had. For viewers outside of Australia, the Hottest 100 is an annual music poll run by Australian national radio broadcaster Triple J, in which at the end of every year, the public votes on their top 10 songs of the year from December of the previous year to November of that year. And then in late January of the following year, they'd run a countdown show called the Hottest 100, where they play the 100 top voted songs from 100 to number 1. It's an annual music pastime here. And for some context on why the Hottest 100 was important, rather than our national ARIA charts, the Australian equivalent to something like the Billboard charts has been declining in Australian representation for years now. This has previously been where most of the talk about the Australian music industry dying have come from. And for what it's worth, the ARIA charts were not kind to Australian music in 2024 either. Being dominated by artists like Taylor Swift, Charli XCX, Billie Eilish, and Sabrina Carpenter, it took until August and November of 2024 for an Australian album to chart a number 1, with Lime Cordiale's Enough of the Sweet Talk. And after that, only 6 Australian albums charted at number 1 for the entire year. Enough of the Sweet Talk by Lime Cordiale, Beautifully Ordinary by Tones and I, Sunday Sadness by Amy Shark, Cold Chisel's 50-year compilation album, Missy Higgins's The Second Act, and Tension 2 by Kylie Minogue. Australian punk band Amyl and the Sniffers were about to be the 7th Australian act to top the ARIA charts, up until Sony Music Australia decided to screw them over and game the ARIA charts so that Tyler the Creator's surprise Monday drop of Chromacopia charted a week earlier than it was supposed to. And after that point, no more Australian artists made number 1 for the rest of the year. In the annual charts for 2024, there were only 3 Australian albums. The Kid Leroy's for the first time at number 67, and 2 compilations of Australian juggernauts. The previously mentioned Cold Chisel 50 Years Best Of album at number 44, and In Excess's compilation The Very Best at number 81. But despite all that, the Hottest 100 has always been a hotbed for Australian music. At the start of last year, I wanted to make a video analysing the Hottest 100s from 2020 through to 2023 and talk about how female artists in Australia were starting to lose their place in the music industry, and the Australian music industry was becoming more and more male-dominated. So I made spreadsheets to look at the Hottest 100, look at the number of artists, Australian versus international, male versus female, and consistently more than 50% of artists and 50% of songs were from Australians in those charts. Despite the ARIA charts, the Hottest 100 was still the place where Australian music thrived. That was until this year's countdown. In 2020, out of the 100 songs in the countdown, 66 were by Australian artists, and there were 45 unique Australian artists. In 2021, there were 51 songs by Australian artists, with 44 unique Australian artists in the countdown. 2022, 57 songs by Australian artists, with 36 unique Australian artists. And even in 2023, where some of this decline seemed to be showing, but it didn't seem so severe, there were 52 songs by Australian artists across the countdown, with 31 unique Australian artists. And this was including the fact that in 2023, most of the big Australian juggernauts, your artists like your Lime Cordiale, your Rufus Du Sol, Gang of Youths, Middle Kids, or San Cisco, those artists who were consistently getting numerous spots in the Hottest 100 and constantly had huge album releases. None of them had released albums that year, with only 4 big Australian albums. For the First Time by Kid Leroy, Drama by G-Flip, Struggler by Genesis Owusu, and Something to Give Each Other by Troye Sivan. Come 2024, Lime Cordiale, Rufus Du Sol, Middle Kids, San Cisco, Thelma Plum, and Amyl and the Sniffers. All Triple J mainstays. And despite that, in the Hottest 100 of 2024, there were only 29 songs featuring Australian artists. And out of those 29 songs, there were only 20 unique Australian artists featured. Out of 60 unique artists, there were as many songs by Charli XCX, Billie Eilish, and Gracie Abrams cumulatively as there were unique Australian artists in the 2024 Hottest 100. So I just realized while editing, I was wrong on this statement. I accidentally entered one of Kid Leroy's entries twice, so it was giving me 20 unique artists. It's actually 19. There were fewer than the individual entries of Charli XCX, Billie Eilish, and Gracie Abrams. Yippee! Triple J mainstays like Lime Cordiale and Rufus Du Sol failed to even crack the top 50. And sure, we had 2 songs by Amyl and the Sniffers in the 40 to 31 range. We had 4 songs by Royal Otis. And I think Royal Otis was the best Australian mainstream album we had this year. It doesn't change the fact that the Australian music scene is losing ground to the international artists. And I don't think it helps that people don't want to engage with genres outside of their favourites. When I was at Beyond the Valley this year, I consistently saw crowds of people show up for the indie rock juggernauts, like the Terrys or Vacations, and then leave to the DJ stages the moment that something else was on. And even worse, out of those 20 unique Australian acts, there were only 6 acts that didn't feature an all-male lineup, and only 3 of those had a woman or non-binary front person. It also just occurred to me while editing that the only non-male fronted Australian artist to have their original music make the Hottest 100 was Amyl and the Sniffers, as both Missy Higgins and G-Flip got into the Hottest 100 off their Leica versions. And I don't think Triple J is at fault at all here. For as quick people are to just say, oh, Triple J is just a pop radio station now. They only play stuff from TikTok. I don't think you actually listen to Triple J anymore. They are still constantly pushing Australian artists. But a Triple J Unearthed High winner hasn't made the countdown in the past 3 years, where for nearly 6 years, the Unearthed High winner would end up in the Hottest 100 that year. Triple J are doing everything they can. People just aren't engaging with the music anymore. I singled out Charli XCX, Gracie Abrams, and Billie Eilish earlier in this video, and that's not as a mark against the quality of these albums. And while neither of them were my favourite pop album of the year, it's undeniable that both Brat and Hit Me Hard and Soft were amazing albums in their own right. But still, the fact that they took up a collective 20 spots, the fact that Charli XCX and Billie Eilish both took the record for most appearances in a single Hottest 100 off of G-Flip, the fact that Billie Eilish broke the Hilltop Hoods' record for most cumulative entries across all Hottest 100s. The Hottest 100 has stopped being Australia's. I'm recording this before Monday the 27th, when Triple J play the list from 200 to 101. And so for shits and giggles, I'm putting on screen the artists who made the spots from 101 to 120. That if the Charli XCX, Billie Eilish, and Gracie Abrams mysteriously disappeared from the list, these artists would have made the countdown instead. It would be extremely funny if there is a Billie Eilish, Charli XCX, or Gracie Abrams song on the screen right now, and I am not removing that. In that hypothetical list, here are the Australian artists, if any, that would have made the countdown. If anyone's made it to the end of this video, I want to leave you with one last message. And this isn't just for Australians. The music industry everywhere is making it harder for smaller and smaller artists. Find what local music venues are in your area. Find tickets to a $10 or $20 show. Go find your new favorite local artist. Hell, some venues might hold residencies with an artist for a month, or they'll hold free shows one night a week. Scenes you create around small local artists are some of the most passionate scenes you'll find. I encourage you, go support your local music.